Is the screen visible?
No, sir.
Yes, it's
Okay. Now coming
Yes,
back
sir.
to investment, uh, we being a student of economics or being a student of finance, we have been taught that diversification is a tool which is used by the portfolio managers or which is used by the investors, not only in the stock market, rather a normal human being also, to diversify the risk. And to what level we should diversify, it depends like what is the magnitude of our investment, what is the volume of investment, and what are the options available with us. But it is found that the investors or the people who have any investment, not only in the financial market, but like we each one of us invest in some or the other type of assets, may not be physical, or it may be intangible also, like many of us might be investing in knowledge, many of us might be investing in education, or in land or properties. So there is a phenomena called insufficient diversification. Large number of researches indicates that investors do not adequately diversify their portfolio, and their portfolio holdings are much lesser than the recommended level. And while diversifying their portfolio, investors' psychology play a very important role, and some of the psychological biases are explained below. Now, what is that psychological bias? Now, suppose there is a trader or who is investing in oil. Now, the first option is insufficient drive for diversification. When oil prices are very high, he will say that there is no need for diversification. And when oil prices are low, the investor may have no capacity to diversify. When certain assets are very high level, they are at their peak, the investor might have the belief that since we are making profit and profit and profit, there is no need to diversify. I should keep all my money in this particular asset. Suppose if it is a property, if there is a building, so I should invest, I should buy one more building, I should buy one more land, I should buy one more factory. So there is a similar kind of factory. So there is no need to diversify because that particular kind of asset is giving me huge return. And when there is the market will crash, so whatever the investment they had in their previous asset, that will definitely that will go down drastically. And then they will say that since we do not have the capacity to diversify because we have lost everything, because that particular sector has done miserably bad. Say for example, the burst of the housing bubble in Japan. Everybody have invested in housing only in Japan, and a day come that when the housing bubble has burst, and whosoever have invested in housing have lost their money, and after a certain point of time came that there was no capacity to diversify. The same thing we can really correlate with the subprime crisis of 2008. Everybody was investing in the and mortgaging property, and uh, a time came in 2008 that the same property prices which were inflating a few months back, now they started crashing, and then people, those who have invested in the property market, they have lost everything. And after a few months they were complaining that we wanted to diversify, but since I have lost all my money, I don't have the capacity to diversify. So basically, this is because of the poor understanding of the other sectors and ability to market into other sectors and perception of this, here in this example, oil and gas, from the other sectors. We'll discuss about all these things later. Now, why actually we are not investing in other sectors, or why we are not uh, thinking about diversifying our portfolio or diversifying our holding? Uh, so one such reason is this home side bias or familiarity bias. I will invest in a property with which I am familiar with. The property which is situated in New York might have a very lucrative, might be very lucrative for investment for anyone, but since I'm not physically seeing it, I cannot invest there. Other things are also there, like control and other laws, everything will be there. So think it is not in New York. I'm sitting here in Allahabad. So I will be, if suppose a property is being offered to me even in Lucknow, I will think twice that should I invest in Lucknow or not, because I'm not familiar to that situation. I'm not familiar to the place. I'm not familiar to the locality, and that's why I will be preferring to invest in a property which is situated in and around my locality. That is the home side bias. There are some researches on home side bias and familiarity bias has already been done. Like the stock exchange of the country where investors are residing is supposed to be more familiar or less ambiguous than the stock exchange situated in a foreign country, and that's why this most of the portfolio managers, most of these mutual fund managers, these international money managers, mutual fund managers, they will invest in the stocks of a company or this depository receipts of a company which is situated in their home country. Rather, like for example, a fund manager who is located in USA will prefer to invest in a company which is an American company, and a fund manager who is located in India will be preferring to invest in a stock which is listed in Indian stock exchanges. This is one example of this home side bias. Firms or companies situated near to the place of residence of investors is considered to be more familiar than the firms or companies located far away from the place of residence of investors. This is an experiment, a study conducted on the employees of a company, and I can just tell you the name of the company also. The name of the company was Oil India Limited, which is a Mini Ratna company, and employees of the company have been given option to invest in the equity share of the company where they are working, that is Oil India Limited, and a company which is other than their own company, other than the company where they are working. And it was found that there is a clear-cut preference among the employees to invest in a company where actually they are working, that is Oil India Limited. Another example I can tell you, another study was conducted and it was already published, that the preference was asked from the businessman to invest in physical form of gold and exchange traded fund, ETF gold. And here the condition was given that this gold you are buying is not just having an ornamental value, it is for the purpose of investment only. So given the condition that you want to invest in gold, so which form of gold will be more preferable for you, whether that is a physical form of gold or this is ETF gold? And clear-cut preference was given by the businessmen who are dealing with the risk and return every day. So a clear-cut preference was given by the businessman in a particular city that they want to invest in a physical form of gold, knowing fully well that there is a lot of risk associated with the physical form of gold. There are a lot of other difficulties associated with keeping and maintaining or managing this physical form of gold, but still their preference was to invest in a physical form of gold. Whatsoever may be the benefit of investing in ETF, it is convenient to hold, it is safe, it is less risky in terms of securing the gold, but still their preference was for physical form of gold only. So this itself is one of the testimony towards the familiarity bias investors or the players are exhibiting towards any investment. It is also found that familiar stocks looks attractive for investors due to familiarity bias, and investors invest heavily in those stocks and invest little or nothing at all in the stocks which is not familiar to them. Another study was conducted on the bank employees. A study was conducted on the bank employees where they have been asked to give their preference for investment in mutual fund And now two category of mutual funds were given to them. We know that almost all the banks in India, they sponsor one asset management company, and they are the sponsor of some of the mutual funds like SBI Mutual Fund or ICICI Mutual Fund, SDFC Mutual Fund. So the bank employees were given an option that which mutual fund will be more preferable for you. The mutual fund is sponsored by your own bank, and the mutual fund is of other mutual funds. Here also, home side bias or the familiarity bias was clearly visible among the employees. And remember, my friends, they are not ordinary people, they were the bank employees. For the ordinary people, we can say that they are not financially literate and they do not have knowledge about the finance. But here, they are the bank employees who are fully aware, fully literate about the finances. They are financially literate. They know everything about the nitty-gritty of investment, and still they have exhibited clear-cut preferences for the familiarity bias. The familiar investment, that is the familiarity bias, was reflected upon them. So this is one reason that investors or the players in the market, they do not diversify adequately. That is because of the familiarity bias or because of the presence of home side bias. Again, next limitation of the diversification is the naive diversification. That is, people have to make simultaneous choices. They tend to seek more variety than they would have sought had they made sequential choices. If I ask you, like for the male friends of mine, like how many shaving blades you will be using in the next 1 year? So the decision might be very difficult, or it might be little bit difficult for you to take, like in next 365 days, how many shaving blades you will be using. But if I ask you how many shaving blades you will be using next week, so now that is very easy decision for you, and you can answer it very easily that okay, someone might be using 1, 2, 3 or 4 depending upon one's nature and usage of the respective blades. So when people are given simultaneous choices, they tend to make more variety than they would have normally sought for had they made sequential choices, small choices, and that is the result. They go for the naive diversification. So similarly, the example that I have given you about the shaving blades, similarly, if the investors are asked about the stocks to be considered for investment in next financial year, they will choose relatively more number of stocks. If you ask like how many stocks you are going to invest in the next 1 year, definitely the number will be very high. But if we ask the investor, if we have the same investor, that what is the number of stocks or how much is the amount that you are going to invest next week or the next month, the same investor will be considering lesser number of stocks than he would have chosen for the investment in the next financial year. And suppose if he had chosen for the 1 month only, so for 1 month multiplied by 12 equal to his 1 year's investment will be lesser than the option 1, which is given to him, that if you have to choose the volume and quantum of investment to be invested in the next 365 days. It means people are asked to make when people are asked to make large investment by considering several stocks at once, they usually used to diversify more as compared to making the same type and amount of investment in small investment sequentially. While making retirement plans, a good number of people use simple strategy of allocating 1 by n of their savings to each of the n available investment options. In USA, this 403k retirement plans are familiar to, I hope each one of you will be knowing about that your employee themselves has to plan their retirement, and they have much more control in managing their retirement money than here we have in India. Now with the introduction of national pension system, actually we are now moving towards that system only. Here in our national pension system also we have some control, that like we can identify our fund managers, we can change our fund managers, we can give directions to our fund managers that to allocate more equity shares in our retirement for our NPS account, or lesser equity shares or more government securities. This kind of directions we can give to our fund managers. In USA, the control by the employee is much more than here we have in India. So it is found that what people used to do in USA, that if there are n number of options available for investment, so simply they will divide the amount that they are going to allocate for their retirement account divided by the n number of options, that is equally they will be dividing. And what is the argument they give? They argue that it is practiced by people irrespective of the investment options. And it was also observed that many people adopted this practice very religiously, as if this practice or this allocation is coming from some laboratory, and that's why they do it very religiously. Excessive trading. This is another reason people do not diversify adequately. Now, one of the clearest prediction of a rational model of investing is that there is very little trading. Yesterday we have discussed, while discussing about this investor rationality, that if all the players in the market, in the market, in the system are rational, then there will be very little trading. I will be selling certain shares not because I think that this is overvalued, but only when I really am in need of money. Then only someone will be selling, and someone will be buying certain shares not only because this particular equity share or this particular asset category is undervalued, but only because that person is really in need of that particular asset. So, meaning thereby, if all the players in the market or all the players in the system are rational, there will be very little trading. But is it actually happening? No. Why there will be little trading? Because all the investors have the same set of informations. What Harry Markowitz have suggested, that because of this calculation of risk and return, and we are plotting on the graph this risk and return, and we'll be getting one broken X-shape curve, which will be called as dominant curve, and efficient frontier will be getting, and then we'll be drawing a curve which will be tangent to that dominant efficient frontier, and we'll be getting an optimal portfolio. So optimal portfolio, if we have devised, then all the players in the market will have the same set of information, and who the fool will be there who will not be willing to invest that optimal portfolio? Everybody will be trying to hold that optimal portfolio. Means there won't be any trading, there won't be any transaction in the market. But in spite of having an optimal paid portfolio, in spite of having known about all the pros and cons of investing, there are tradings, lot of tradings, and every day, if you just see the volume of trading in the market, every day there are lot of the volume is just increasing every day by leaps and bounds. It means that the players in the market are not rational. So a stock purchased by one investor is likely to be sold by her because it is not an attractive stock to behold. But the problem is, no one in the market would be ready to buy this stock, because as a rational investor, this stock is unattractive for other investors as well. Yeah, this is if I am trying to sell a particular stock because this is not attractive, this is not doing good, so the same information is available to other investors also, that this particular investment is not a very performing investment, and then nobody will be willing to buy an investment, buy an asset which is not performing. And ultimately the result will be that there won't be any trading, there won't be any buying and selling of that particular stock, or there will be very rare, little possibility of buying and selling. The volume of trading on the stock exchanges all over the world has increased, and this itself is a testimony of the fact that significant number of the investors in the stock market are not rational. So this Barber and Auden in the year 2000 they published a paper and they found that investors would have earned more had they traded less. The underperformance of the portfolio return is firstly due to the transaction cost and secondly due to the poor security selection. So far as this transaction cost is concerned, we have a full session on transaction cost analysis by Professor Sagir Hussain. I think on the day after tomorrow. So we'll discuss about this transaction cost in that particular session. And one of the most obvious behavioral explanation of such excessive trading in the stock market is the overconfidence of investors. And it is observed that generally people have trust in themselves that they have such information which is strong enough to justify a trade. Now come to the selling decision. What governs a selling decision? Investors do not like to sell any asset which is currently trading at a price lower than the price at which they were bought. Definitely, that is called nobody would like to sell any asset which is now current, which is traded, which is which is priced below its buying price. Because if I will be selling an asset at a price which is lesser than the price at which we have bought that asset, means we are making loss. And making loss means, and realizing that loss and realizing the fact that we have made loss, it gives pain. Losses gives pain and nobody would like to take any kind of pain. And this phenomena is called disposition effect. But as a rational investor, what should have been the decision? If we sell an asset which is currently traded at a price lesser than its buying price, then we'll be booking loss, and this loss will be set off against the profits from some other sources, and consequently we will be able to minimize our tax burden. Second, this particular asset has gone down in value. It might be because of some fundamental defect, some fundamental problem in the category of that particular asset. There must be certain fundamental problem with that particular asset, and that's why it has gone down in value, and there is a possibility that it will go down in value further. For example, if you just took consider, say, the Reliance Communication. There is one equity share, I am just quoting the Reliance Communication. In the year 2007, it was traded at 700 plus, and now if you just today see the price of Reliance Communication, it is at around 1 rupee only, from 700 to 1 rupee. Rupee 1. Jayaprakash Associates. In the year 2008, its price was at around 380 rupees, and the company has not given any bonus, the company has not given any stock split, and today it is traded at 1.5 rupees approximately, 1.5 to 1.75. So had the investor whosoever has hold that particular asset would have sold it the moment when it started falling since 2008, if they would have sold it, now they would have minimized loss to a certain extent, and now it is traded at just 1 rupee. And if we just open the window, open the market, we'll see that there are only sellers in that particular category for that particular stock. There are no buyers for that. And what mistake we do? By retaining those losing stocks, we sell the winning stocks. And we sell the winning stocks, ultimately, consequently, will be eliminating those winning stocks from our portfolio, and we expect our portfolio to perform better. Next is the buying decision. Some factors which have an impact on the buying decision is, one is the attention effect. People's decision to buy a stock is due to attention effect. Just our previous speaker have talked about this nudge theory. I'm just taking a cue from that. Say there are some online sites, online e-commerce websites are there like Amazon or Flipkart, and suppose we have decided to make some buying decision. We are thinking to buy, say, a mobile phone, and simply when we'll search mobile phone in, say, Amazon.com or Flipkart.com or Snapdeal.com, there will be 10,000 plus number of mobile phones. A category of mobile phones will be shown to us. Now, which mobile phone to buy? Or suppose we are willing to buy shoes. Now, simply when we'll search shoes, say men's shoes or women's shoes, there will be 5,000 different types of shoes available. And now this is a dilemma for the buyer, for the consumer, like which shoes to buy, which mobile to buy. So definitely he will be or she will be buying that particular shoes or mobile which will draw his or her attention in some way. Because suppose he has seen someone wearing that particular shoe, he or she has seen someone having that particular mobile, so directly we will go to that particular mobile only, and any other mobile which will be near to that category only, and we will be buying that particular brand or product. So similarly, decision to buy a stock is also due to attention effect. There are more than 8,000 listed companies in the Bombay Stock Exchange. There are around 2,000 listed companies, listed stocks in the National Stock Exchange. Similarly, in New York Stock Exchange or Shanghai Stock Exchange or Tokyo Stock Exchange, there will be thousands and thousands of companies. But I, as an investor, when I will be entering into the market and I started to scan the stocks which I wanted to buy, I will not scan all the stocks listed on the stock exchange. Rather, I will buy a stock which has caught my attention due to any reason. Maybe I'm from Assam, so I'm more familiar with the stocks like Oil India Limited or ONGC or Indian Oil Corporation, because I have seen refineries, I have seen oil mills. So definitely the stocks which will be dealing with oil and gas will catch my attention. Someone is from Bombay, someone is from Ahmedabad. He has seen these textile mills in Bombay or some other kinds of factories. Someone is from Gurgaon, or he has seen this the factory of Maruti at Manesar and Gurgaon, and then definitely that particular stock will catch his attention. So attention effect plays a major role in a buying decision of people. So one reason for the finest attention by any stock is its extreme past performance. Yeah, other than the familiarity and home side bias, it's extreme past performance. Because if like we might have encountered a situation that some of the agents or some person will talk to us and they will give a suggestion that I've invested in this particular asset category and it has gone up in value in 1 year or 2 years, and it's very good asset to buy. Reverse is also true. Some people will give a suggestion that this particular asset category have gone drastically in value in past 6 months or 7 months or 1 year, and now I have lost so much of the wealth because of my investment in this particular asset category. So both the extreme past performances will catch the attention of the buyers. Another heuristic is the representative heuristic, which will govern the buying decision of a people. That is, some investors who systematically look for and buy stocks with very well past performance is their representative heuristic. It is because investors believe that the good performance of a stock will continue, and this is a naive use of the representative heuristic. This stock has performed good in the past, and that's why this past performance will continue. But my friends, being an investor, even in the advertisements also it is shown that the past performance is not the indicator of future performance. But still, simply because we are drawn by the representativeness of that particular investment, that In the past, it has earned so much of the, it has given so much of the return to the investors. So definitely will be able to gain similar kind of return from this investment in future as well. So this is the representative heuristics, one mistakes that people meet. Another category of investors may look for stocks with extremely poor prior performance. This is because they believe that such stocks are undervalued and will rebound. There is one case, psychology and selling decision. Now we'll discuss about this. Like in December 2007, the prices of equity shares such as Jayaprakash Associates, Reliance Communication and DLF were at a level like 300, 750 and rupees 1400 respectively. In January 2008, the stock market was crashing, then the prices of these stocks also started falling. It was seen during those days that investors who were in the need of some money were selling those securities which has not gone down significantly in value and avoid selling securities mentioned above because of their significant fall in value. They had the belief that if they continued to hold this security, then in course of time they would be able to recover the loss. But these securities continue to fall, as on December 2016 they were traded at rupees 9, 45 and 130 respectively. Thus, the rational decision would have been to sell those shares, and if they would have done this, then they could have avoided further loss. Now question is, what this phenomena is called? Yes, what this phenomena is called, that avoid selling a stock which has gone down in value. Now this is a question to all of you. We have just explained what this phenomena is called.
Disposition effect.
Yeah, disposition effect. And what are the benefits of selling a stock which has gone down in value?
Further loss.
We can avoid further loss, number one. Number two, tax benefits.
But I have one point I want to mention here. This is the one side of the story that you have put out. Yes. There is the other side of the story also. In case of Alok Industries, they have gone down for a past in the year also, and from 4 they have risen to 17.
Yeah.
Alok Industries, you might have aware about that.
Yes, I know. So before making any investment,
in case of that, it doesn't. In case of that Alok Industry, this further loss doesn't work. Theory.
Yes. This the theory, the disposition effect is simply that avoid selling the losing stocks. But yes, my friend, there are certain stocks which are very promising stocks. Say for example, now during this corona pandemic, all the stocks in the market have gone down. The IOC from 150 rupees to now it is traded at 80 rupees. Oil India Limited from 130 and 200 level, it came down to 70 and 80 rupees. Now there are something called this market risk, where market will be crashing, all the companies will be crashed, all the companies will be losing. It's not that only one particular company will be losing, and only those companies will be able to survive which are fundamentally strong. Now this is not a rule of thumb that you should always sell a stock which has always gone down in value. You should also see the fundamental strength of that stock. So fundamental strength of that stock, there are so many ratios are there, like say PE ratio is one such measure, that just to measure whether the stock is fundamentally strong or not. You can see the EPS of the company, the market value of the company, market capitalization of the company. These are some of the indicators to decide whether the stock is fundamentally strong or not. So if a particular investment, a particular asset is fundamentally strong, definitely this is an opportunity to buy, because the same stock which otherwise would have been available at a very high price, now the same stock is available at a very cheap price, and definitely this is an opportunity to buy those assets. But this is not universally applicable, because one should be very much cautious while investing in such kind of stocks, that the fall in the stocks It may not be simply because it may not be led by the market forces, but it may be something fundamentally wrong in the stock itself, which is dragging its price down. So that's why the next question is it always advisable not to sell a stock which has risen in value? The answer just I have given, that it is not always advisable to sell a stock which has risen in value. Always we should see what is the fundamental strength of that particular asset. I'm not using the term stock. It may be any asset. It may be a land and property. It may be some financial assets. So we should see the fundamental strength of that particular asset before making any decision to buy or sell.